So let's start. I just a brief introduction before we get started. I think we may have touched this at the end of the last shiur, which was mainly on Erev Pesach Shabbat. But now we're going to concentrate on how we're going to prepare for Seder night, okay, Leila Seder, and a lot of people maybe have been in Leila Seder in the past and perhaps know more or less how it works and can probably sing the Manishtana very well. But do we really know the halachot with regards to Leila Seder? Do we really know why we're doing what we're doing, or we're just following a book which we haven't seen in the past year? Baruch haba, Albert. Baruch haba.
No, hello.
And
Sorry
and
for
that
that.
and like I brought on the WhatsApp, I don't know if many of you saw, but according to the Sephardi custom, there's 59 mitzvot on this night. The Ashkenazim say 64. Then we will see the differences soon, Bezrat Hashem. Mitzvot Doraita, Mitzvot Deshbokaret, Mitzvot Derabanan, Minhagim, customs, and sometimes even less than customs, just inyanim, right? So each thing needs to take its proportion. So anyone who's leading the Seder or is part of a Seder, right, should understand, where's the most important part that I need to put my focus on, right? So just I throw an example. We're having 4 cups of wine, and it's very important to have, wine, right? And if you can't have grape juice, right? But if you're going to go from some French wine at the first cup, right, and you're going to be dizzy and you're not going to be able to do the last cups properly, then then pace yourselves, So these kind of things can only be done through proper preparation. So I'm going to try my best in the next 40 or so minutes, Bezrat Hashem, to go through as much as I can. Bezrat Hashem, I will give you this Word document that you'll be able to use and change and follow and do what you like with it for your own piece. So even if we don't finish till the end, don't worry, you'll have the rest to be able to. It's quite straightforward. I've done it especially in a bullet point way, so it'll be easy also to remember and to have a note. You can also print it off and have it next to you. Sometimes it's easier, or have a Haggadah that you've gone through already beforehand and be able to, highlight the areas that you'll be able to remember what you're going to do. Okay, so most of these halachot you'll probably find in the Haggadah or any substantial Haggadah of some sort, right? Obviously, there are some tips, obviously, aren't there? But you would find some part of the stuff there. So I'm going to start with 3 important points just to discuss the general laws of the Seder. The first, the Seder plate and the preparations. Then the second one will be leaning, right? And keeping the kids awake. And the last one is regarding the shiurim. And then we're going to go through Kadesh or Chaz Karpas in that order. If you have a Haggadah there, then it'd be best to try to open and try to follow in. Best to use the Haggadah that you're going to use. And that way you're going to be an expert in the Seder night. A very, very important night. We discussed it before. It's a night where really the amount of mitzvot there is, it's the only night that we actually do the Hallel Shalem in the Bet Knesset, right? It's a time of connection to God. It's the connection of it's a matter of we're going now to our we're going to the petrol station, and now we're filling up the petrol with the emunah and bitachon and Hakadosh Baruch Hu. This is the time, this is the time we're This is the time we're becoming to a Jewish people, to know, not only to know what was in Mitzrayim, but also to know about the Exodus and what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us and what HaKadosh Baruch Hu continues to do for us. Okay? So I'm going to go through it. Again, if there are any questions, please stop me. If I'm going too fast, please stop. And I'll do my best to try to get through as much as I can. You may know parts of this, but bear with me. Okay? I'm going to try through everything slowly. Okay? So first, the Seder plate and the preparations. It is not a normal night, so therefore the minhag is to use the most beautiful utensils as you can for the Seder. If you've got even ornaments to put on the table, a beautiful tablecloth, even it's not necessarily something which is connected to food-wise, but and not something necessarily you would have on a Shabbat table. On this night, it's a night that we're like kings, and we have to establish ourselves like that. So use beautiful utensils, even if not for the meal, and it symbolizes liberty and then freedom. This is a very important preparation of the Chan. All the preparations that we're talking about this year, is an issue because you can't prepare from Shabbat to Yom Tov, right? If it's anyway something that you do on Shabbat, that's fine. But if you're doing especially for Yom Tov, it's a problem. Then you have to do it only after Motzei Shabbat or do it before Shabbat. So preparation of the chair. A lot of people don't realize about leaning on the chair we're going to discuss. By preparing the chair with pillows, with overlays, one should lean on the left side during the Seder, right? And this applies even to a left-handed people. We lie to left. It's obviously because of drinking. We want to make sure it goes in the right area, but it's also a way of freedom. We're going to discuss leaving soon, so I'm going to put a small brackets there. And then when we come to 2, we'll discuss it in further. This is regarding what things I need to prepare. 2 cooked items on the Seder plate. Again, we want to try to remember to do this beforehand on the Friday. After temple's destruction, the sages required 2 cooked items, korban pesach, the shank bone, to symbolize Hashem's redemption with an outstretched arm, the korban chagigah, to represent Hashem's want to redeem us. Beitzah is an egg in Hebrew. In Aramaic, it's be'ah. Be'ah. Be'ah means to want, right? And so it's a sign, korban chagigah. So, but there's also other reasons that's brought down about egg symbolism. Number 4, arrangement of the Seder plate. Okay, now the arrangement of the Seder plate is a Kabbalistic inyan. Okay, the Sephardim follow the Arizal. There are other, the Gaon Vilna has a different setup, right? The setup of the Seder plate, there are 10 items, and they follow the 10 Sefirot, for those who know. And therefore the Arizal has a special way of creating the Seder. The Seder plate is something which is even the Moroccan custom is something which people take on people's heads and they bless with it. This is like the plate with all the mitzvot. This is a plate of mitzvot. So there is a special way to do these. So just quickly, if you look at your Haggadot, they would have like a picture of how to do it. But a lot of people, they don't know this beforehand how to do it. Then they're like, okay, how do I hold the book? Do I hold it this way? Do I hold it that way? How do I go about to do that? So this is just in a nutshell. Top of the plate, place the 3 matzot, the 3 matzot on top of the plate. Okay. Do not need it. Okay. The 3 matzot mitzvah. Yeah, on top of the plate. On the right side, that's the right side, which is in front of you. Again, we're looking at the Seder plate, okay? Not that everyone else is looking at us, rather we are looking at the Seder plate. How do we go about doing it? To the right, you have the shank bone, which is the zerah, symbolizing korban pesach. The left side is the roasted egg. The beitzah represents the korban chagigah. In the center, you have the maror, which we'll be eating during the Seder, okay? Now, behind the zerah on the right side, right? So in the picture, you might see it lower down. Really, it should be behind it on the side of where the zerah is. There's charoset, which symbolizes the mortar, and then you have the beitzah. So this is interesting. Behind what do we put on behind the beitzah? You put the karpas, right? The karpas, we take celery. Nashkazim take potatoes. There are all sorts of minhagim what to do in karpas. We take celery for that. Yeah, typically parsley. Yeah, I don't know why I wrote parsley, but yeah, I would change this celery. Celery. Okay. Okay. In the middle, behind the maror, then you have the maror for the korech to be used for the sandwich. Okay. After having all of that, then obviously you cover the entire plate. There's some beautiful things that you can buy in the Judaica, which have which are nice on the Seder plate, which covers over everything else. Okay. You have other items on the table. This is a big mistake which people think. Where do I put? There's salt water, right? You've got salt water you need to put. This salt water does not go on the Seder plate, okay? The salt water is to remind us of the tears of this. This is not something that you put on the Seder plate. It's important that it's a big mistake that people have. Whatever you're using, if you're using vinegar, salt water, or whatever, lemon juice, you use that on the Seder plate, okay? The Gra and the Ramah. The Gra is the Gaon Vilna, and the Ramah and Ashkenaz have different arrangements. So often in Haggadot, they'd have 2 of the arrangements, and you're like, okay, which one should I do? Right? If you're Sephardic, then you follow the Arizal. And why do we follow the Arizal? Because this is just it's a Kabbalistic thing to do, this Seder plate, right? And therefore we follow the writings of the Arizal, which obviously is the which is the hemshech, which is the continuation of the Kabbalistic understanding. And this obviously minhag Yisrael to do it like that. Okay. Now leaning. Leaning is also a big misconception, which is very unfortunate, and soon we'll understand why. The obligation to eat and drink, both men and women, are both must eat 4 kezetot of matzah. Okay, there are those who machmir will see actually have 5 kezetot, but 4 is the minimum. 4 kezetot of matzah. Let's just go through them quickly. You have motzi matzah, right? You have 2 kezetot. We'll see that in a minute. Then you have korech, and then you have the afikoman. The those who have 5 and have 2 kezetot in afikoman, we'll see why. But the 4 kezetot is a must of matzah, and then drink 4 cups of wine. So very easy to remember: 4 matzot, 4 wine. It should be eaten and drunk while leaning on the left side. Okay. Now, what does leaning mean? Leaning properly does not mean like that. That's not leaning. One must eat on the left side, even if he's left-handed. Someone leans on the right side, they must eat or drink again while leaning on the left side. So you're doing this anyway, you might as well do it properly, because if you don't do it properly, then you're not doing it. It's ad kedei kach. It's a machloket. We'll see between the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim what happens if someone did not lean properly on this. According to the Sfaradim, one has to go back and do it again. Okay? Leaning, according to Chazal, is a 45 degree. Now, a lot of people find that very difficult. But you have to try to, yeah, exactly. Yeah, can you see Gava is doing a great example? But yeah, a lot of people think that if that's why it's important to have some sort of something to lean on, because if he's doing it in the air, he's not really leaning. You have to lean like a king. A king leans. He's got an armchair, and he's got some sort of way of leaning. That's really important. So a proper way to leaning by putting elbows on knees is inappropriate, as it may look like the person's worried or anxious. It's not that's how Mordechai Eliyahu puts it. It's not derech cherut. Derech freedom is to lean on something, on the back of a chair, or the chair which is next to you. A lot of people, even if they're sitting next to each other, so they move the chair around so they can actually lean on the chair, so you're not leaning on your fellow which is next to you. It's interesting to lean on thin air. What to do if one didn't lean? Okay, if someone didn't lean or didn't lean properly, obviously while eating matzah or drinking wine, they must repeat action while leaning. It's good practice for the leader of the seder to remind everyone to lean before you make the beracha. Tell everyone, please, let's remember everyone. Let's try to lean as much as one can. There's actually leniency among women, but it depends if you're Ashkenaz or Sfarad, right? But the minhag is that we all lean. That's definitely our minhag. There is some Ashkenazim who say that women don't need to lean. There's all different reasons why. Let's not go into it too deeply. You can ask me afterwards why. It's a good practice for the leader of the Seder to remind everyone to lean. The Ramah's opinion: one who ate without leaning does not need to repeat the action, but it's proper to stringent lean. So according to the Ramah, which is the Ashkenazi Pesach, it's a machloket in the Rishonim. Yeah, so the question so a lot of machlok, it's not necessarily customs. Sometimes it's based upon the Gemara, and then later on the Rishonim, if it's the Rambam, it's the Rosh. So machlok, the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, what happens if someone doesn't lean regarding these 2 mitzvot of the 4 cups of wine and the 4 matzot? If you look carefully at the list, right, the 4 cups of wine is 4 mitzvot, right, and the 4 matzot is another 4 mitzvot. So these are 8 mitzvot which you put out the window if you don't lean properly. Preparing kids for the Seder, prepare kids to stay up late. Obviously, encourage them to rest in the afternoon. It's going to be easier this year. And what I do is I buy some prizes and incentives. I tell them, listen, you stay till the end, you'll be able to open the new gift. And they're all up till 3 in the morning. Don't worry. They're all going to be there. And this is a time where the father or the mother are giving the children their emunah and bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the time to speak about the Seder. This is the time to give them the love of Judaism, what's it all about, okay? The third is the preparations of shiurim, which we'll discuss, but it's important that it's prepared beforehand, okay? Let's just discuss the shiurim very simply. So regarding the matzot, you have a kazait, right? So for those who are, kazait is more or less around 30 grams, 27 grams, 28 grams. If you're buying the more the pita matzot like you have in Od Yosef Chai, you can get them in London by there. Then it's about 1/5 of a matzah, right? It's best to try to to weigh Obviously, you have the main matzot, right? You can actually, if you're preparing beforehand, so either you know how much to cut, right? So a lot of people cut that, but can you imagine if you have a set of 20, 30 people? So a lot of what people do is prepare them just in small sandwich bags. Okay, this is what you need to eat, and that's where they dish it out to everybody. The same with the maror is a kazait. Okay, and then of course the shiur for the kiddush we're going to learn, but obviously that you don't need to prepare because it's liquid, right? You just need to know how much it's in a cup, which we're going to discuss now. So sorry, this is a bit quick. This is the time to ask any questions before we move on. Any questions, Gabriel? On all you just said, all clear?
All clear for now.
Amazing. Okay, so before each part of the Seder, one should announce the title. We say Kadesh, Urhatz, Karpas, Yachatz, all the titles. And before we do the Haggadah, we say, okay, now up to Magid and get everyone involved. If you've got different Haggadot, to make sure everyone's on the same page. It's always very important. I don't know how many of you are actually leading the Seder, but even if you're not leading the Seder, to know that the person next to you is with you is always something very important. So let's talk about Kadesh, okay? You're pouring the first cup of wine. The first cup of wine should not be poured by oneself. If you pour wine yourself, then you give it to your friend, okay? We're freedom now. We're freedom. We don't pour our own cups of wine. We ask the person next to us to pour the wine for us. The leader obviously recites the kiddush, attention to fill the obligation for everyone present. He does the kiddush, which is obviously mitzvah, to mekadesh on the wine, on the Yom Tov. And this year we discussed regarding Yak Nahaz, Yain Kiddush, Ner Havdalah Zman. We're going to have to do Havdalah as well. And then Shechianu. Obviously, those listening must have the intention to be Yotzeh, to fill the obligation of the Kiddush, right? The Kiddush is recited after nightfall. There's no difference this year, but sometimes people want to try to do it earlier, start earlier. There is an issue regarding starting earlier. One should start only after nightfall. How much wine should one drink? This is an interesting question, and a lot of people get stumbled over this. So I'm going to try to make this as practical as possible. Okay, how much wine do you drink? So ideally, lechatchila, you have to drink the entire cup. Okay, either in 1 or 2 or 3 swallows, right? Not slowly, like 10 times. Rather 1, 2, or 3 swallows is enough. That's lechatchila. One should try to drink the entire cup, right? The next thing is that you should try to drink most of the cup. Okay. You have to drink most of the cup. Now, what's the problem is? The problem is that person needs to drink a revi'it. Okay? So what happens when someone drinks a revi'it, right? And he's got a huge cup of 250 mils. He said, "Nah, I want a nice cup, Lila said a huge cup." Then what happens is he's not makayim the mitzvah behidur. He's not makayim the mitzvah as it should be done. Why? Because yeah, he might have a nice cup, and that could be amazing for Shulchan Aruch to have his champagne or to have his nice cocktail what he wants, right? But for the kiddush, for the mitzvah of 4 cups of wine, right? One should definitely try to finish the most of the cup. So a lot of what people do is just make sure they have a cup which is, up to, let's say, 150 mils. So you can at least have, 86. I'll have the revi'it, and I'll have ready most of the cup you already have drunk. So it's very important to take that into account. So a lot of people actually measure the cup beforehand. They know, this is the cup that I can have. So I'm making sure I'm being yotzeh. I think there's a list of probably 7, 8 different levels of how much to have. Maybe I can send it on the group. But this is just a mere brief summary. So lechatchila, drink the entire cup. If you drink more than half the cup, you fulfilled your obligation. Okay, that's what we just discussed. That's considered rov kos, the majority of the cup. At a minimum, you drink rov revi'it. So if someone tells, listen, I can't, and it's so difficult, the 4th cup, this, you can have rov revi'it. That's a less darga, right? So even if the cup is large, but you're having rov of revi'it, which is about 45 milliliters again. How much is a revi'it? Anyone know? 86. Very good. 86 is the gematria of kos. Kos is 86. Chaf is 20. Vav is 6. And Samach is 60. So you've got 86. It's a very easy way to remember it. So most of a revi'it is about 43. So you're going to have about 44, 45. You're already having a rov revi'it, right? So even in a large cup, you have to drink more than half, even if it's more than a revi'it, because you need to drink more than half the cup. Okay, is that clear? So even if you're drinking a large cup, you have to drink more than half, even if it's more than a revi'it, because you need to have rov of the cup, and then you need to have the 86 mils. Okay, sometimes it's very confusing this, and a lot of people get confused. 1 second, they have revi'it, they have to rov revi'it, they have the cup. So sometimes it's important just to prepare yourself in advance with a cup, which would make sense. Okay, reciting ala gefen. Now, in the normal circumstance, when you drink wine, you make an ala gefen afterwards. Okay. Now, in this circumstance, it's very interesting because this is all happening before we're washing our hands. So we have the kiddush, the first cup, and then you have, urchat, kapas, yachat, magid. And what happens in magid? We pour the second cup. Okay, we pour the second cup, and then we make a gal Israel at the end. Now, where does the ala gefen come in? Do I need to recite on the kiddush? Do I not need to recite? How does it work? Okay, so let's see. Do you not recite ala gefen for drinking wine, even if you drink an entire revi'it? Right? If it's hard to drink most of the wine in a large cup, you smoke like okay, that we've done. No, it comes a bit later. 1 second, I've jumped the gun. Obligation exemptions, women are obligated to drink the 4 cups of wine. They're obligated in the mitzvahs. Children who understand the story of Exodus must also fulfill the mitzvot of the Seder Night, mitzad chinuch. Obviously, we're here for the children to give over the understanding and the Judaism to the children. Therefore, it's important they are part and parcel of the mitzvot as well. Okay, the cup as well in itself, there are a few halachot which are important. The cup must be obviously complete with no nicks and cracks. If you've got a cup with a crack on it, right, a person should fill its cup for kiddush, obviously till the end. One doesn't need to do till the end, and when he lifts up, it puts up. But till the end, it means, especially for the zman of kiddush, right? It's very different. The kiddush of the Leila Seder to other kiddush. Normally, other kiddush, what happens is you just have the husband. He picks up the kiddush and then he drinks and he gives to everyone else. But here, everyone's having their own cup. So really, everyone else is doing their own kiddush. It's important everyone has a full cup to the end. Shouldn't have a big cup and do you understand? Shouldn't have like a big cup and then fill just to review it. It's better to have a smaller cup, which is less nice, but to fill it to the end. Before doing the kiddush, at least on the first cup, one should rinse the cup both inside and outside before pouring, even if it's clean. Right? There's a special din of shtifa v'adacha that one does before does a kiddush. Right? There are those who even do it on every single cup. It's a chumrah. One doesn't need to do that, but at least on the first cup, one should do it, especially in kiddush of every Friday night, every Shabbat. Before doing kiddush in the cup, one should make sure it's complete and make sure do shtifa v'adacha, rinsing inside and outside of the cup. The cup should hold at least 86 milliliters of revi'it, but according to the Chazon Ish, obviously we have the shiur of 150. So you might see people, I don't know where you are, being machmir more, because obviously it's mitzvah derabanan, so we want to try to do more. According to the halacha, especially for Sfaradim, we always took on 86 milliliters. Chazon Ish is the chumrah. Red wine, it's best to use red wine for kiddush and for the 4 cups. If someone has difficulty with drinking wine, they can use red grape juice instead. Should be using red wine is better. I know Rav Mordechai Eliyahu had a very difficulty to drink wine, and he actually used to have grape juice. So don't feel bad having grape juice and say, no, Rabbi said it's better to have wine. It's absolutely fine. Find us and drink wine. We're not here to get drunk. We're here to be free, to be merry, and one who can drink wine, obviously, it's better. Shechianu, or stating Shechianu, one should have the matzah and maror in mind. Again, it's not prepared for this. One has to make sure he's doing Shechianu. He's doing a mitzvah, which is once a year. Right? It's important one has the matzah and maror in mind when doing shechianu and the kiddush. What about the bracha after the wine? This is what this is the me'en shalosh, right? So ala gefen, we don't make, right? He's doing we don't recite ala gefen after drinking the wine. But what about the bracha after wine, the me'en shalosh? No bracha is recited after the first or second cup of wine, since birkat hamazon will be said later, right? Also, no bracha is recited after the 3rd cup, since it will be said after the 4th cup. Okay, this is very different to the Ashkenazi Pesach. Okay, the Ashkenazi Pesach, if I'm not mistaken, is that on every single cup they make a bracha achrona. Okay, so you might have a Haggadah, especially the picture Haggadot with English, which a lot of the converts use, are often Ashkenazi Haggadot. Now, the Haggadah, the Magid itself, is actually brought in the Rambam. The Haggadah itself, the Magid is the same more or less, right? But sometimes the halachot of the Haggadah are sometimes very different, and a person can end up actually doing a bracha in vain because obviously he doesn't follow the halacha of the Ashkenazim, and he's now doing a bracha. So one has to be careful. We don't make a bracha after the third cup, and we don't make a bracha after the first or second cup of wine. Yes.
Uh, could I ask you to elaborate briefly why there is this difference between
Yes, of
between
course,
these
of
two
course.
different
Yes,
minhagim? Because this is
I will. Yes, I will bring it in a minute.
okay.
It's not to do with
Okay.
minhagim. It's got to do with the psak. So the question is, when you're making the bracha, right? Is it considered the hefsek, right? If I drink one cup of wine now, another cup of wine in an hour, do I make a bracha on the first cup of wine? So the answer is, if I know I'm gonna have two cups of wine, then obviously not, right?
Ah,
But the Ashkenazim say no. Since it's bracha, next bracha, you don't know when it's going to be. Maybe in 2 hours, maybe in 3 hours, maybe if you get there, then if I'll get there, So they say, each one will make a different, it makes a different bracha achrona. Okay, that's a machlok between the two answers. Thank you for the question.
yeah, okay.
One should drink a revi'it in one or two swallows for the third and fourth cup, so you can recite al hagefen at the end. Right, we do recite al hagefen. So again, according to Sfaradim, first cup, second cup, then birkat hamazon. We do Birkat Hamazon, that's Yotzeh, the first two, right? Obviously, yeah. And the third and fourth we do Ala Gefen at the end of the third and the fourth together.
Mhm.
Mashenken, Ashkenazim, they do first cup. If I'm not mistaken, do Ala Gefen on that. The second cup, Ala Gefen. Then they wash their hands, they do Birkat Hamazon. Then again, Ala Gefen, and the fourth one, Ala Gefen. So I have another three brachot there. Okay. Urchatz, washing hands. The one thing I'm not sure about Ashkenazim Sfaradim, don't quote me, is whether we do an ala gefen after the first one. I think we do. As far as I'm mistaken, we do. If an Ashkenazi would ask me, I would tell him to do. Urchatz, washing hands. General, one should always wash hands without a bracha before eating wet food, even throughout the year. Yeah, davash tibulo b'mashke, it's called. One should wash one's hands. One should often has that with pickles and olives and things like that. One's having, there's an interesting psak if a person has biscuits with tea, if he should wash his hands beforehand. It's an interesting psak of Masas that one doesn't need to because he's always careful not to touch the water because it's hot. But that's a separate inyan. But here, even if people aren't makpid on this throughout the year, here it's important, and that's why we do the urchatz. According to Sfaradim, everyone washes their hands without a beracha, right? A person should be careful not to speak between washing and eating the karpas, following to the karpas or eating the vegetable, with the celery, less than a kazite, and dipping. You dip it in salt water, some dip in vinegar. Yes?
Can I ask why it is why no bracha is being said here after
No, a
washing hands?
bracha, on washing one's hands?
Yeah.
Because one only breaks a bracha on washing one's hands when one washing his hands for bread. When washing his hands for this, one
Yeah.
doesn't wash hands. Now,
Okay.
we're making a bracha b'repri ha'adama
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
One shouldn't have a kizayit, okay, because otherwise you're gonna have to have a bracha achrona, which we don't want to get ourselves into,
Yep.
because you're anyway gonna wash your hands for the seudah. So
Yeah.
often some people have berachot even before having a meal on Shabbat. A lot of the Moroccans, they like tasting the salad there or much.
Yeah.
Gabriel probably can relate to that. Yeah.
Okay.
uh, One should be careful not to have too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go a bit quicker. You don't need to lean, yeah, on the karpas and on the maror. Yeah, no need to lean on eating the karpas because the karpas obviously represents the pain of the subjugation, and leaning symbolizes freedom. So we don't want to lean when we're having maror or karpas. So that's all the time that we're leaning. Okay. Yachatz. Now this I find always difficult. Which matzah do we take? Which matzah do we break? Okay, so there are there are three matzot, right? Three matzot. There's some to say it's considered like Kohen, Levi. So they have all sorts of Kabbalistic ideas. I'm just trying to get to the halacha. The leader takes the middle matzah from the three matzot, according to the Kabbalah, one has to break in a certain shape. So really, the shaping can only happen really on the pitot. You can't really shape it, obviously. That's another that we always had this. Yeah, it was even thicker. I think the matzot used to be. Right. The reason why we have thinner matzot now, just a bit of history. There was no way really to preserve the matzot. So when people used to do it at home, and it was a shtetl, and it was some ghetto, it was easy. It was very simple. But in Ashkenaz, when it started to be like, bigger cities, a bigger thing, they had to make matzot. And how could you preserve such a large number of matzot? A month or two, you'd have to make the matzot. It would go all stale, right? And there was no freezers there. So what they said was, if we make it as flat as possible and as crumbly as possible, right? It can hold its freshness until then. So okay. Also, it's much easier to buy the pita because at the end of the day, you want to be able to have the kazait within the specific amount of time, and sometimes it can be quite difficult with a cracker-based matzot.
Mhm.
So again, this is also a matter of like, do I have five matzot and I have it with the proper matzot, or should I break my teeth and only manage to have four? Of course, I do the mitzvot properly and how it should be done. Okay, the larger pieces set aside for the afikoman. Everyone knows what we do with afikoman. We hide the smaller pieces returned between the two whole matzot. Okay. Okay. If not, then if one
Sorry
can't,
if I ask again. Sorry if I ask again.
no problem.
I know I'm being a pain, but I have a matzah which has the shape of a disc. How do I rip it or break it so that I get one vav and one dalet?
Okay, I have to send you a picture on that. It'll be quite
Uh,
difficult to
Please
explain
do
to you
so.
otherwise.
Please do
I
so.
will try my
I know
best.
I'm like a
Okay.
child, but I want to understand this properly.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Let's start the Magid. The Magid is the most important of this part. It's the mitzvah of Higadet Ali bin Chabi Amor. We have a mitzvah Doraita. Okay. Of sending this story. The Rambam says that even a person does not have a child,
Mhm.
um, one should speak to his friend. If even is sitting by himself, the Rambam says one should ask questions to himself and answer the questions to himself. Even if you're Chaim Kanievsky, you know all the Torah, you know this. This is a time you have to do the mitzvah of speaking about the Exodus of Egypt. We uncover the matzot and we raise the middle matzah. Okay, that's the time we say halach ma'aniya. This is the bread of affliction. Everyone should try to explain in their language, the meaning of halach ma'aniya. Again, we're saying in Aramaic because we want everyone to understand. Again, people do not understand Aramaic. They better do this in English. Okay. We have also very interesting, encouraging questions, and this is the reason why we do these things because we want to try to keep the children awake. It's important to know that. We do unusual things to prompt the children to ask, right? Why is this night different? Manishtana, right? Everyone knows the full questions, and we do it in order to try to make the children awake. Like I said earlier, there are more modern ways to keep them awake, but it's important to me to just go through. I try to understand how the Seder is built. It's built for the children, for the people to answer. That's why it starts off. We're opening, we're lifting the matzah, we're doing this manishtana, we're drinking wine while we're leaning. It even says, maybe give out some nuts to the children, remove the Seder plate from the table, return it, say we're slaves, we pour the second cup and we don't really drink it. We do all these like weird things because we want the children to understand this night is very, very different. Okay, it's a mitzvah to answer obviously any questions from the children immediately, but ensure they don't fall asleep before eating matzah and maror and that become so a lot of people spend a lot of time on the magid, and then, when it comes to the mitzvah, the right of matzah, right? They fall asleep. It's already too late. Because one should always be careful to time it right. One can always, speak afterwards in length regarding the Exodus, always afterwards as well. Raising the wine, we cover the matzot before raising the wine. It's inappropriate to raise the wine while neglecting the matzot. That's the reason why we do that. We raise the cup in 3 occasions. Yeah, it's 3 points here. Vihi shamda. Yeah, remember we lift the cup, we sing Vishamda. When we say the words Dam, Esh, V'timrot Hashan, blood, fire, and the pillars of smoke, and also Lefichach before the Hallel until the end of the Bracha of Ga'al Yisrael, at the end of the second cup, those are 3 times we raise the cup. Again, we're raising the cup. Oh, we're about to drink. Oh no, we're putting it back down. Blood, fire, and plagues. So this is also something which is sometimes a misconception. What do we do during this time? So if you look at your Haggadot, there are 10 plagues, and then there's an acronym, Tetzach Adash Be'achav. Okay, so the Ashkenazim, you probably see that they'll put their fingers in the wine and they'll put them down, right? That's a known custom in the Ashkenaz custom. It's also a known custom for Sephardim to do that if they don't know the Sephardi custom. Okay, the Sephardi custom is not to do that. Okay, they pour the wine. As I got brought up that my parents used to do something, and then I used to see other people do other things. So now in Baruch Hashem, it's got a lot of clarity. It's a bit easier. You pour wine from your cup into a broken or disposable cup, right? 16 times. There are those, my parents actually take a kara, and then my mother holds the water and my father holds the wine, and each one pours it to 10 times for the plague. I can't figure out how it comes to 16. Then you have the Tachadash Bachav is another 3 times, and there's another 3 times also there to do it. So you have total 16. Again, it's a minhag. There's no mitzvah. The wine poured out should be discarded down the sink or the toilet. This actually wine is known to be something very quite dangerous. A lot of people, if they want to get rid of their neighbors, would throw it near their neighbors, and they wouldn't see them the next year there. But that's why it should be thrown down the toilet, and that's where we want it to be. Obviously, now, if you're pouring the wine, you don't have wine anymore in your cup. So obviously, you rinse out the pouring cup and refill it with the wine for the second wine. Then we have matzah. If you remember, Ram Gamliel says you have 3 things: Pesach, matzah, maro, and you're makayim the mitzvah. You remember that? So I'm just going to go through because that's where the Haggadah really started from earlier times. Ram Gamliel is already a Tana, and the first time we really have the Haggadah is much later on. But the Baal HaAgadah, we call it, took from obviously what Gamliel said. Gamliel said, you said these 3 things, you're Makayim the mitzvah of tonight. So it's very important to Makayim the mitzvah, obviously, properly. We say matzah, we take the top matzah from the Seder plate and show it out. We say matzah, and then maro, we do the same thing. We lift up. And then by Pesach, we don't raise the shank bone. Right? Do not raise the shank bone, as it may give the impression of sanctifying it as an offering. This is the Korban Pesach. No, we don't say these things, and you leave the shank bone there. The second cup is at the end of Magid, and that's why it's here. We say lefichach, we cover the matzot, we raise the second cup. Everyone at the table should raise the cup until the end of Galaysia and then drink the wine while leaning. If one drank obviously without leaning, he needs to drink again. And here I brought here the Ramah holds if it's not necessary, but if it's preferable to be stringent, if one person, so even the Ramah who says that if someone doesn't, he still says one should, but according to Sfaradim, it's the halacha. It's a big difference, because according to the halacha, the Rambam learns that it's part and parcel of the mitzvah is the leaning. So you're not makam the mitzvah even. Masha'en according to Hashitah, no, it's only a criteria within the mitzvah. You're still makam the mitzvah, but one should do it. Okay. Sephardim generally do not recite Borei Pri Gefen on the second and fourth cup, right? There is a Rambam. The Rambam says one does make the beracha of Borei Pri Gefen, but here we do not we don't. The Shulchan Aruch does not posek with the Rambam. Okay, so it's interesting. Those who would pass on the Rambam would actually say Borei Pri Gefen on the second cup and on the fourth cup. We don't say it because we say that when we said the first cup, you had in mind the second cup, like we discussed earlier. Rachza is fairly simple. We're washing our hands. One shouldn't talk. This is why important between washing hands until korech. Okay, not because when he's doing motzim matzah and then he's doing another 2-3 mitzvot. One should be careful to be quite pedantic about this. And when the leader should remind everyone before washing hands to have in mind that they yotzeh the brachot of hamotzi and alachilat matzah from him. A lot of people are mistaken because they used to Shabbat hamotzi lechem min haaretz and everyone eats. But you're missing the point. There's 2 brachot. Hamotzi min haaretz, amen, and then achilat matzah, amen, and then shechianu, and then amen, and then you have to then you go and eat your matzah. How many matzah do you eat? So for motzi matzah, the bracha is made Hamotzi is made of 2 whole matzot and 1 broken matzah. The broken matzah is to remember obviously the poverty, so we have that extra half matzah in the middle there. If you remember, we don't take just, a lot of people make the mistake, they say, no, just eat 2 matzot, right? You don't have to go back and do the bracha again. But lechatchila, the way to do it properly is to take all this 2.5 matzot all together and make the bracha. Now, when reciting Hamotzi, you hold the 2 complete matzos with the broken matzah in the middle. Then you say halachilat matzah. So even you say Hamotzi lechem in haaretz. A lot of people think, oh, don't make lechem. You only make halachilat matzah. It's a mistake. Hamotzi lechem in haaretz you make on the matzah, right? On eating now the matzah. Halachilat matzah is on the mitzvah of eating matzah. It's 2 separate brachot for 2 separate different things. Okay, so after Hamotzi, so if just for argument's sake, the following day when you're eating matzah, you don't make 2 brachot. You only make 1 bracha of what? Of hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? On Chol Hamoed, you eat matzah. What bracha do you make? You don't make al achilat matzah. Al achilat matzah is made only on Seder night for the mitzvah of matzah, for eating the matzah, eating the gzait of matzah on Leil Seder. So you make hamotzi. This is very interesting. The alachil matzah, you should put down the bottom matzah and recite alachil matzah while holding the top and broken matzah. That's how one should do it. Okay, if one doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Kazait amount, you eat in kazait of 27 grams, that we talked about from the top matzah, and another kazait from the broken matzah, right? So a lot of people, let's say, have this bag, right? So you have the bag of the 27 grams, and then the person who's leading should give you a bit of the broken matzah to do the mitzvah. Then you're dipping the matzah in salt. According to Sfaradim, the Ramah says one doesn't put it into salt. We do, or again, it's according to Kabbalah, dip it 3 times. When you're eating both kezetim within 4 minutes, those who can't do it in 4 minutes, there's a further sheet, I think, for not taking 9 minutes. If one should really eat both kezetot, yeah, that's the top. Both kezetot 4 minutes. If one not, then can you at least 1 kazait within 4 minutes? One can't, then 1 kazait within 9 minutes. If one's elderly or ill, then the most lenient opinion of kazait that you can still make a baracha on is 20 grams. Okay? If one can't have 20 grams, one should not make the baracha of alachilat matzah. And what happens if a person can eat just 3? A person should have 4 kezetot, yeah. But what's the most important from those 4, right? So I've written if a person only has 3 kezetot of matzah, one should eat a gezait for korech, okay. And if you have 4 more, you have 1 for motzi matzah, 1 for korech, and then you have 1 for afikoman. So afikoman is the most least important. You have motzi matzah and korech; those are 3 important. Then afikoman. And then praiseworthy, someone who can have 2 for the afikoman. Again, the afikoman is very difficult because one can't actually drink or eat after the afikoman anything. Which there, Rabbi I think he is matir certain drinks. I don't know if we'll get there because we have to finish very soon. My wife wants me out already. 11:20 already. I think we're going to try to finish here. So those you can't eat matzah. And then you have here the maror, that you have afterwards the korech, which is fairly simple, shulchan orech, which is also simple. Some have the custom to eat egg also on this, and that's it. And so I think this is fairly simple. I'm going to send this to you, and you're going to look through this. If anyone has any questions, then by all means, please send on the group. Batzlacha. I'm just going to take any questions and stop the recording. Stop recording.